one thing that we always want to emphasize is there's no such thing as 100% security, but there are a lot of smart and affordable things you can do to stay much more secure.
Welcome to Cybersecurity for Main Street. This is a podcast about keeping your business safe. I'm joined today by Ann Westerheim. She's the CEO of Ekaru. It's a greater Boston area managed service provider. Ann, welcome.
Hey, thank you so much, Raj. I look forward to talking with you today.
Thank you for joining us. I have a question about managed service providers. Can you explain what the role of a managed service provider in the greater Boston area is? What does it do to help small businesses?
Yeah, so a managed service provider basically provides IT services and cybersecurity, maybe cloud, phone services to businesses that either don't have internal IT departments or need enhancement for their internal IT departments.
Okay, and so can you give an example of what kind of small business might need a service from an MSP?
Yeah, so we work with a lot of businesses in the greater Boston area. So, for example, one client we work with is a 10-person accounting office. So, they need all their tax preparation software. They may have contracts with those particular software vendors, but they need to make sure all their computers are up and running, their network is secure. When it's tax season and they can't print or something won't scan properly, they need somebody to call who's going to be able to help them work through their problem. So, that's the kind of thing we do, and it's everything from strategy and planning of, like, working out a budget, when should they be replacing equipment, uh, how to enhance their wireless, to coordinating with their very specific line of business applications to make sure the upgrades are getting done in time and they have access to the latest software. It's kinda
And I
all of the
think,
above.
yeah, I think in this time of this age of ransomware hitting small businesses, which is very prevalent. In fact, I think it hits small businesses much more than it hits large companies. That making sure that you are safe is also critical, and having a managed service provider, a managed IT service provider in Boston, just gives you a lot of peace of mind.
Yeah, if you look at the traditional role of an IT department is to keep the network up and running. And in this day and age, keeping the network up and running really has a lot to do with protecting against cyber threats. And you brought up a really important point that ransomware attacks, you might read the headlines. MGM was in the news recently. That was a major cyber event. And a lot of people reach the false conclusion like, okay, well, I don't need to worry about that. They're going after big corporations. And that's just that those are newsworthy. Those will make the national news, but small businesses are being impacted all the time.
Yeah. So let's go into some of the benefits. You'd mentioned a few of them of having a managed service provider, uh, and what would some of those risks also be? Some of the benefits and the risks of having a provider on your team.
Yeah. Well, the big benefit of having working with an IT managed service provider versus, say, an individual person, one person in an IT department, people in an IT department, is you get a really broad mix of experience. So on our team, we have folks who are really into wireless. We've got one guy on our team, just he's reading about wireless all the time, knows how to optimize the networks, knows how to prevent the dropouts. We have other folks who are very much into Microsoft 365, how to secure that. So you get a very broad mix of expertise. So basically, you hire a whole department kind of on a fractional basis versus, the risk of, not working with a team like that is you're not going to have access to the latest expertise. For example, I've been out to, I think, 6 conferences so far this year. We're constantly out there uh, learning about the new tools, learning about what the new threats are, and we bring back all that benefit to our clients so they can, like, we do the homework to keep up to date on tech so they can actually focus on their own business and what they need to do.
It's kind of like having an entire IT department available to you all the time, every day of the year, so you don't have to worry about the one person that you might have hired who does IT in-house.
Yeah, and if that person's out sick or they do need to go on vacation and recharge, you got the rest of the team to back it up. And so our team, we're kind of segmented into groups. So we do help desk, the regular can't print, can't scan, need help with this. We go on site. We focusing on working with small businesses in the greater Boston area. We do believe in the personal touch, so we actually schedule proactive visits as well. We call them flex time visits. But we
Hmm.
like to go out, meet the team because we find that a lot of times people will maybe work through an issue. They're walking across the building to print because they can't print to the printer that's right near them, but they don't say anything about it. Kind of frustrating. But when we go out, hey, while you're here, can you take care of this? Can you take care of that? And we find that really helps folks get what they need,
You
basically.
know, I love that because if you were working in a really large company and you had a situation, you would just say, "Oh, call IT." In a small business, you don't have that. But if somebody hired Ekaru, you would have that.
Yeah, absolutely. And we don't want to lose. We have very advanced, secure remote access tools. So we can do a lot of what we do remotely, but we don't want to lose really getting to know the customer. And in
Hmm.
fact, we have the 10-person accounting office I mentioned earlier is actually in our building. They'll just come over. Sometimes they just come over to get a snack and have a conversation. But
Yeah.
we want to know what's going on, like when's busy season for them. What pressures are they under? What do they need to deliver to their clients? And we find that just a transactional kind of approach doesn't really allow us to get to know the customer to that level.
Let's go into the actual services offered by Ekaru just a little bit. Now, you've written a book, Cybersecurity for Main Street, and I think it is a fantastic way for companies and individuals to understand more about the risks related to that. Can you talk to us more about that as a service that you offer, cybersecurity?
Yeah, so we refer to ourselves as a security first organization. Some people will say MSSP. MSSP.
Hmm.
We kind of view it as security first, and we very strongly believe that to be competitive, strong businesses need to protect themselves against cyber threats. So what I did with the book, it was actually in my head for a very long time. Finally, got it down on paper and published this year, which was pretty exciting. And the idea, I called it Cybersecurity for Main Street Cyber Fit in 21 Days. And the idea is uh, that it's an approachable path to cybersecurity. So it doesn't get into a lot of jargon. Sometimes I can't resist, and there are some technical terms in there. But I open up each segment with a cartoon and kind of explain what the gist of, like, so for example, strong passwords, right? They're very annoying. People like to have passwords they can remember, like cat 123.
Hmm.
That A password like that's gonna put you at great risk. It could be cracked almost instantly. People reuse passwords from site to site. So what some of the cyber criminals do is they do something called credential stuffing. And if through no fault of your own, your password, say to Chase Bank, gets breached, and you're using that 5 other places, the, the criminals are going to test that password at other banks, credit cards, whatever you have online. So I strongly believe that cybersecurity requires everyone's participation. So the government is doing a lot to help push forward cybersecurity. Big tech companies, there's new companies coming out every day with different tools that can protect. But I strongly believe that individual participation really matters, and that there's a lot of smart and affordable things people can do to stay safe online. And also, I don't want people annoyed at their IT departments when they tell you have to have a strong password and you have to use multi-factor authentication.
Hmm.
And that's just the code that you get after you type in your password. You have to type in this annoying code to get through to the system. And don't get annoyed at your IT department when you have to do that because it keeps you safe.
Yeah. So that's an interesting point because part of what you do is you also help companies educate their entire teams about ways that they can keep the entire company safe. Because it's not just the owner or the couple of leaders that are in the small business that need to pay attention to it. It's something that's a team-wide effort, and that's something you help with, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And creating a culture of cybersecurity is really important. So if you're the small business owner, maybe you got 20 people on your team, you might really keep great care of your own security, good password policies, and everything. But how do you know that every single one of your employees is doing the right thing? So we actually roll out formal cybersecurity training. Recently, with a law firm in Boston, we hosted just a town hall, kind of an Ask Me Anything, where we went over some basic cybersecurity tips. Um, and I always find that every time we do this, we get some really great questions from the audience because people are thinking about this and they want to know more. I recently did another session. I brought some copies of my book to the local senior center and talked to folks there about just smart and affordable things you can do to stay safe online, because getting intimidated by all the buzzwords and or just thinking like, oh well, my technology will protect me, I'm safe, I have a spam filter or whatever else I have in place. That's not enough, and that culture of cybersecurity is really going to make the difference.
That's a really important part of the whole process. Let's turn to how you assess a small business's IT needs. What is the first thing you do when you go into a client and they need to figure out what they have to do next?
Yeah, so typically when we meet with a client, we'll probably have a phone conversation in advance to kind of talk about if there's generally a match between us of what they're looking for, what we can provide, and then we'll come on site, meet the team, walk around the office and get a sense of all of their technology. And in that case, it's kind of visual. We might look, if they have an on-premise server, might look at the service tag on there to find out the age of it, look at the computers, and then talk to them about what they do with technology. How do they use technology to service their end clients? What holds them back? What gives them an advantage? Trying to really understand what technology, how it impacts what they do. And then, generally, we'll come up with a proposal of what we would like to offer. We have best practices, and assuming that they end up onboarding with us, what we do is at that point we install a lot of sophisticated tools that will actually scan the whole network, and that's when we get a very accurate asset inventory of what they have. We want to
Mhm.
know, are things patched up to date? Is the technology up to date? Is there a computer in the corner that nobody remembered was there, right?
Yeah,
That's,
yeah.
maybe running Windows 7 because it's a shipping computer in the corner. Uh, we'll go through and then we do like a 1 week review with the client where we'll go through everything that we find. There might be some differences in what we thought was on the network, what is on the network. When we talk to people on site, they might say, oh, wow, the wireless here is terrible or can never connect. Or we find out everybody's putting their personal iPhones on the company main network and not using a guest network. So we have a conversation at that point, and then we typically will put on all of our security tools and the things that we recommend as best practices and try to accomplish that in 30 days.
Can you share some examples of some unusual things that you have found when you do that assessment? And I ask this because there may be companies out there listening thinking that I'm going to be a little embarrassed if she finds all of this kind of stuff. Have you found anything unusual? And obviously, that you create a safe space for them so that you
Yeah.
can have that. But what are some of the interesting things you found?
Yeah. I mean, when we work with a small business in the Boston area, we become part of their team. We're working for them, with them. And I'm thinking of one example right now, talking to a machine shop that does some defense work in the greater Boston area. And they were just very intimidated by CMMC standards. So, talked a little bit about what they need to do to get ready for those new security standards. And it turns out a big part of their office didn't have air conditioning. So they said in summer, we change our schedule. So we wrap up by, I think they 2:30 in the afternoon. So they're working early and getting out of there before the sun works.
Mm.
Also, sometimes in an environment like that, you might find some really dusty systems, and that can impact performance. That can, cause end of life to roll around. So we're not worried about that. We have specialized vacuum cleaners for electronics that will clean those out. So, um, it, yeah, and I think sometimes people have really old systems or we've seen rooms full of old equipment. One local law firm was so afraid of getting rid of old equipment, which was a good thing because he was very conscious about not letting old data on hard drives get out into the wrong hands. But
Mhm.
he basically lost an entire room in his office. And we said, hey, we host electronics recycling, hard drive shredding events. So we can, just bring them over here, chain of custody, you'll get a certificate of destruction. So, eh, yeah, it's,
Mhm.
we're there to help.
Yeah.
And, and sometimes people don't have the budget to do everything. So we'll lay out a roadmap and we ask them, just be honest with us. This is what we recommend as a best practice. We're going to help you get there. We're not expecting you. We don't require you to do everything on day one, but we do want you to work in a security conscious kind of
Yeah.
way.
Yeah, you mentioned so many juicy nuggets here. Things like shredding your hard drives, not something that everybody thinks about. They think, okay, I'm done with my old computer, and I'm just going to get rid of it, and that's actually not the thing to do. So being
Yeah.
secure about that. So, what kind of questions should a small business ask an IT service provider in the Boston area, such as Ekaru?
Yeah, I think, in looking for an IT service provider in Boston or anywhere, I think try to find out who you're actually going to be working with. One of the things that we pride ourselves on is we say not too big, not too small. So our entire team gets engaged with a client. It's not a slick presentation you get up front and then it's a totally different team. I get involved with talking to clients on a regular basis, get involved in some of the projects. Also, I would say ask about does the company follow their own best practices? So we're really strict about everything we recommend in terms of security for our clients. We we practice in our own company, and I think that's we take that responsibility really seriously. That people trust us with their networks. We are constantly learning the latest about cybersecurity, how to keep things secure, and we're following our own best practices. And that's something I think everybody should look for and everybody should expect from any team that they work with.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a moving target, cybersecurity,
Yeah,
because it's just like every single, like not just day, almost every single hour, there's something new going on. And it's good to have somebody that you can rely on, a trustworthy resource for that. What are some of the best practices about transitioning from one managed service provider to another one? Because there may be companies already who have another MSP that they could be using.
hmm,
Maybe they're not totally happy with it because they want to do that elevated level of security. I mean, you have a fantastic book on the topic, so that can actually help explain
yeah.
what you do and what people should be doing, and that might be an incentive because if people aren't getting that level of quality of service from their MSP, they might want to transition. So, how would they actually move from one to another?
Yeah, typically moving from one managed service provider to another, or maybe from say an in-house person. And we see this a lot. Sometimes there's one IT person in-house who's retiring or moves and they need to do something new. And then there's a fork in the road. Do we hire one person? Do we hire a team? Depending on the size of the company. And at that point, it's pretty standard process. There's passwords that need to be securely shared at that point and typically a little bit of overlap to answer any questions that are going on.
Hmm.
We recently started working with a nonprofit in the area where the long term IT guy was going to retire and he was looking for somebody to really take care of the organization that he really cared about quite a bit. And that was a longer transition period of kind of getting to know what all the systems are. Like we have a lot of sophisticated tools that can do network scanning so we can see all of that, but we also want to know historically what's going on or how do the different teams and the organization work together. So some sort of overlap like that is really helpful.
Yeah. What kind of reporting do you provide to your clients so that they see what's going on? Because there are threats that you're protecting against every single day. And the good news is they don't have to worry about it. They can sleep a lot better at night because you're worrying about it for them. So, what kind of reports do you share with them?
Yeah, and one thing that we always want to emphasize is there's no such thing as 100% security, but there are a lot of smart and affordable things you can do to stay much more secure
Yeah.
out there. So we typically we send out a monthly executive report, and that shows what systems they have. So kind of the starting point for any security program, the NIST cybersecurity framework is identify. So you want to know what you're actually protecting. So we send out an inventory list every month. uh, we send out a second report on that gives the details of each of the systems and the age of the systems, making sure that they're on current versions of technologies that can be supported. And in that executive report, we include things like security patches that have been rolled out, systems that are protected by various security um, tools and functions. Also, backup reports. So, hey, this is how your backup is going. And then we also have some additional reports for um, what's known as threat hunting. So that's basically AI tools that look at various things that are running on systems. So back in the day, all you needed was antivirus protection. A virus gets discovered, there's a definition for it, and then the antivirus software detects that. In this day and age, you need to be looking for a lot more that's going on in the network. So that's where the detect and respond recover comes into place. But for example, let's say a program that you use every day shouldn't be making changes in the registry. So a lot of bad actors will hide malicious software in things that are normally used for good purposes. So that's what threat hunting looks at. And one of the people on my team was recently doing a review meeting with a client and just showed him the sheer numbers. Like these are all the attempts on your network.
Mm.
Nothing got through, that could be detected there, but know that it's always going on. And occasionally we'll pull firewall reports, like basically there's somebody knocking at the door on that office firewall basically all the time. In this day and age, we're seeing a lot of folks. We recommend that everybody get cyber insurance, and we're seeing in this day and age the cyber insurance companies want to see more reporting. So we'll also be running vulnerability scans for clients, comprehensive reports that show the full patching status, et cetera. So years ago, you could just sign up for a cybersecurity policy. Doesn't happen anymore. Now they want to know what MDR, so manage, detect, and respond software are you using? And they have a list. We approve these. We don't approve these. So the stakes are getting higher to even be insurable in this day and age.
And that's a really important point because if you get hacked and someone takes your data, that could literally put you out of business the
Oh,
next day. And
yeah.
so, for business continuity, one, you definitely want to have the insurance, but you also want to have the systems in place so that if an attack occur that does get through, you are actually secured because your data is protected, and not just your own data, but the data you host for your clients. Because the last thing you want is now a lawsuit from your own clients going after you because your data wasn't as secure using best practices.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one really important thing for small businesses to remember. So when you read the headlines, a lot of these big businesses rebound pretty quickly. Their stock, if they're public, their stock is going to take a dip, but they rebound pretty quickly. If you're the local law firm, medical office, accounting office, and you have an incident, you're going to lose trust with your client base. And they have other options to go other places. And the business that somebody may have built over a lifetime can just evaporate. And so having insurance can really help offset some of that financial risk, and it could very well make the difference between being able to bounce back or not. And
Mhm.
having the right security protocols in place is what you really want to do, is to make sure that you really stack the deck in your favor to not have a catastrophic event, not have an event that you can't recover from.
Yeah. You have a guide that you offer on your website too. Could you talk about that for a moment?
Yes, so on our website, we give information about how to secure a business, explaining some of the simple terms. Also, a big point of what we try to do is explain things in plain English.
I love that because
Yeah,
that's really what, yeah, you're not necessarily talking to other deeply technical people. And sometimes all that IT stuff can be a bit overwhelming.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some of our clients really love it, and they just love learning new things and picking up new things. And other
hmm
folks just say, "Hey, I hired you. You take care of this. We
Right.
no more. Just make it work, keep it running,
Yeah.
etc."
Yeah. How can people get your book and how can people reach Ikaru?
Yeah, so the book is available online, and so it's Cybersecurity for Main Street, Cyberfit in 21 Days, and it's available online at Amazon and actually in a couple of local libraries in the Boston area where I donated some copies.
And how can people reach Ikaru?
Mm. Yeah, and people in the Boston area can reach us at www.ekaru.com. Uh, and find us online. We're pretty active on social media.
Very good. Thank you so much. And I know this has been a very valuable session for a lot of people who are trying to get an understanding of what a managed service provider can do and the risks of not having one could actually put you out of business. Thanks again.
All right. Thank you, Raj.